it's Cara. How about another old video that I've edited for your viewing pleasure? This one is a fuzzy background of some grape leaves. I was just getting started on the painting. Here we go. It's early in the morning on a Saturday and it's quiet in the house, and I'm going to spend some time working on a fuzzy background. First, I'm going to start with erasing some of the pencil lines so they don't distract from the fuzziness of what I'm painting. So I'm going to be working on the background area here between the stalk of the grape vine and then the major leaf in the center of the painting, which I will paint later. So with my pencil lines lightening here a little bit, I'll get ready to paint. My palette's kind of a mess. It's lots of stuff on it, but it doesn't really matter because these colors they're all sort of interesting colors. They're kind of rich and muted. So I'm going to start with a little cobalt blue. And some quinacridone rose. That's going to come next after I clean my brush. There's quin rose. Excuse me, that's quin coral. Quinacridone coral. I'm going to make kind of a maroony color with those two. And just going to paint it straight onto Arch's 300-pound cold pressed paper up in that little nook and cranny up there. So the way this works is that the edges are hard up against the defined objects, the subjects of the painting, but within the space there will be no hard edges, there will be soft. So I'm kind of stretching this out with a little bit more water so it's less intense in color. Mix in a little more cobalt, make it a little more purple blue in the band there, and it's just merging with the wet up there. I don't have to make it look exactly like my painting because this is just here for inspiration, especially with background, but even with other parts of the painting. I like to say that we are not slaves to our photos, but they are our servants. I'm going to stretch that out again with a little bit more water. A lighter spot. A little bit more straight cobalt. Just let it bleed on up, just have fun with it. And get a little bit of quin rose to fill in that spot. And go back and lift again because this is a watercolor, it has a mind of its own. Sometimes you really have to babysit it, lift and then lift again as it continues to bleed. Sometimes when people watch me paint, they tell me that I look like I'm a patient person. I'm going to put a little bit of kind of an orange in there. That spot I lifted. Go back down. As I'm painting, I want to be sure that I'm keeping track of where my edges are. This is a really nice controlled space. But if I'm working on a larger area, I have to really have my wits about me because it's really easy to leave an edge and have it get hard, and then it's more challenging to make it soft later once it's already dried and not have it look really scrubbed. So I'm working with a little bit of new gamboge here. Figuring out where I am. Looks like I got ahead of myself with where I was following the drawing, but it just doesn't matter. I'll just make it work. That section of gold there is not as high. It's not as tall as what I have, but I'm gonna dull up a little green with whatever's on my palette, a little brown, a little something sort of violet. A little bit of Quin Coral mixed with new gamboge and whatever else is on there to dull it a little bit. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, kind of give myself a place to paint up to with a little bit more of the quinacridone coral. I'll soften that edge so I can meet up with it, top and bottom. There we go. All right, now in that space in between, it's largely gold, so I'm going to kind of find my way through the darker shapes. Added a little bit of that cobalt with a tiny bit of Quin Coral mixture in with the new gamboge. Sometimes it works best to sort of lay in your darker shapes and soften them, and then fill in with water or light paint in between. That's what I'm doing here. Just kind of softening those edges, because by the time you get it soft all the way in there with water, if what you want is sort of a light spot in your background, you end up with a little bit of paint on it from just the working of the paint into the, around the edges, and it sort of fills in. Sometimes you actually have to go back and lift again. But this is wanting a little bit more, so I'm just going to do a little more in there. I might have to darken these darker areas again. I'm basically using pretty much 3 colors plus a little bit of Quin Rose in there, so it's amazing what you can do with a limited palette. I've been painting more and more with limited colors in my paintings. I think it creates harmony and unity in the painting. This wants to be really dark in there because I got off, so I'm just going to kind of stretch that out a little bit so there's not so much gold in that one area. So I put those darks in, and then I put the lighter yellow in. Now I'm putting the darks back in again. I see a little soft orange in here. It's safer to do this as a second layer because when the underneath layer, well, the darks that I've painted here are still wet, I can move the particles of pigment around, whereas on another layer I can just paint right over them. Mixing up a green here. I got too much yellow in it. Put a little brown in it. So I paint the shapes as if they're quite distinct, but then they end up being less so as they soften. They kind of merge into one another. Keep softening my leading edge. And the top edge, as it merges in with wet paint, it just softens itself. They just sort of blend into one another. Here's a nice vibrant quin coral with a little bit of yellow in it that's going in here. Here's a similar color with a little more brown to it for a little variation. I don't paint with fancy brushes. I like small brushes for some reason. This is just a kind of a crappy Princeton snap. It's been well loved. I don't know why, maybe we're all different, but I really beat up brushes for all the lifting and I do, so. Last thing I'm going to do is soften these edges so that when I pick this up later, it will have a soft edge in there, and that's a little spot there. So thank you for joining me for a little painting. I'll share what the painting looked like when it was all finished next. So here's the section of the finished painting that I just did in this video, next to the stalk, between the leaf and the stalk. And here's how it fits in with the whole painting. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for tuning in.